Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Thread X3 Production and the Month of Love. Oh, I am Nick.
And I am Nate.
And today we're going to be talking about a video game with love. There's not a ton of them, or at least that are overtly love. So today we're going to be talking about Arise, A Simple Story, or Pixar the Game. So,
You're not
just
wrong.
letting you know, if you have not played Arise, first off, definitely play it. It's 1,000% worth it. Right up here, I'll do the review that I did for it back when it first came out. So go check out a review if you'd like to see, okay, what is this actually about? Now, if you have played it, keep watching because we're going to go real deep into the themes of it, everything. So before we kind of go level by level talking about the story and kind of the metaphors of each level and things like that, let's talk about our overall. You know, you already can get my overall in the review. So you tell me your overall thoughts about this game.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
It is, for me, like I saw a little bit where some of the story was going, and we'll get into that, a little bit more when we break down the levels. But even though I had a basic idea of where this game was going to take me in certain moments and in certain levels, I was still along for the ride and was captivated by the gameplay as well as how each level felt a different kind of freshness. Like it wasn't the same thing over and over again. So it's like, it's very few times where I can say that I have played a game from start to finish where I haven't thought about this, or the other feature from it and just thought about the game itself.
Yeah.
So for me, I think, now granted, I'm just like fresh as far as I finished it today.
Right.
For me, I feel like it's my journey because I missed the journey boat completely, especially on PS3 and even on PS4. Just hadn't played it yet. I'm sure I'll get to it at some point, but I mean, similar art style in the sense of it's kind of a wandering game. But with how everything works together and how even the tiny little things as far as you falling off like makes sense gameplay wise, and I'm not gonna say story wise because it is what it is. You're in Valhalla heaven. But I love the game. It's one that I kind of am mad that I waited so long to play.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that well known. It actually came out in December of the year it came out. So it's like it was kind of just thrown out at the very end. It wasn't a lot of fanfare. The only reason I actually picked it up and played it, I happened to see a trailer of it. And then I was just kind of looking for something to play. And because we always, like, at the beginning of each month, we kind of look what's coming out. And I'm like, oh, this looks like a nice indie thing, and I'm going to do it. And, so that's why. Because, for me, 10 minutes in, I was just like, this game's going to destroy me. This game, like, I could already tell that just, like, the way the story is told, the way that there's no dialogue. There's little like grunts and noises, but there's really no dialogue. It's told in the environment itself. It's told in these little like art things that you pick up from memories, and it's just told through these freeze frames of his life. And the way it told it so beautifully is just what I love so much about this game, and just what really got me from start to I think for the most part I went through this in one or two sittings. This was pretty much like, no, I need to see where this goes or whatever. So, and we'll talk about it more when we're talking about the actual story beats, but it hit me so much different in 2018, I believe, when it was, let me check December of 20,000, or 20,000. I said that weird.
2019 is...
Yeah, 2019. So it hit me way different from 20,000. Why did I do it again?
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
20,019. It hit me way different in 2019 than it did in 2021. And I think part of it was not only where I was as a person, but also where I am post-pandemic. So, well, not even post... Not the point. Anyways, so yeah, that's our overall thoughts on this. Once once again, if you want to go more into it, we have a review up and everything. So yeah, look at that. Now let's get into the nitty gritty of the story, and we're actually going to talk about. We're going to go episode by episode. All right. So the first level is called She. This is kind of the first time you really get to understand this time manipulation feature of the entire game. And I feel like it's also like the coolest representation of that, because it starts off in spring and then you can make it go back into winter. And so when you go back into winter, the snow piles up and everything, and certain things get frozen. And when you go back into the spring, you can actually see flowers like starting to bloom or whatever. And the coolest thing about this goes for the whole game, by the way. The coolest thing about this is that you can basically pause it at any time. And so like seeing flowers come up and then going away and then coming up, because it's almost impossible to play this game without just going just to see everything that there is to see.
So you were talking about before about basically doing this in 2 sittings. It was sometime this past weekend where I just started, and I think it was maybe or something like it just wasn't grabbing my attention. Like I got through most of the level and I was like, oh, this is cool, but it was like I wasn't invested at that point. So I was like, this is cool. Like I was, but like it really didn't have its hooks in me. I really like. It kind of didn't click for me, like even with the story. Like I could see that there was some sort of love aspect that was there.
Yeah.
And like the world mechanics and everything were really cool, and I really enjoyed that. But it was just like, okay, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do something else. So
I mean, I think the coolest thing about this game is that each level kind of has this metaphor or just something that's more subtext. And so for me personally, I don't know if you picked up on this, but for me personally, the kind of subtext of this level, you're going from winter to spring. And so to me, it was almost like the years of my life passing by. And ever since I was a kid, nobody really liked me. I was all on my own. But when I got and I met her, everything changed and everything became more bright and vibrant. My life before She was dark and it was cold and the world was unforgiving. But then after I met her is when it became sunny and cheerful, and like it was like meeting a soulmate, which is almost exactly what that is them meeting. But it's also that passage of time. I feel like winter spring, and that's what it felt like to him, is that the years are just going by and I'm just here by myself.
I can agree with that. I think for me, I don't think I noticed that right off the bat, but again, that just goes back to the whole like I was like, I was pretty much passively playing this level.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, like getting used to it, seeing how it felt and things like that. But going into Joy, that's where I feel like it really got its hooks in me.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that this is where the mechanics start to shine more.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Because
it wasn't simple for a little bit of it. Like especially later on with when you're having to go from B to B.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few times where I had to, like you were saying before, to figure out like what route and what path I needed to go to get to this platform.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's beautiful. Like you're jumping on these dandelions, and something about just changing the tilt of them is just so satisfying to watch. And it's just what's really cool is, especially pretty much throughout the rest of the levels, but this is the first time you really notice it, is they are showing these emotions throughout the level in more ways than one. And so like I feel joyous playing the map. But yeah, easily the flowers going back and forth. I was just having fun doing that. Like it was one of those things where you take like soap and cut soap, like that so satisfying thing. It's just like
Yeah. Yeah, I think the greatest thing about this was just I do believe that when I played the first one, I was just like, oh, cool, a message about global warming, sure. Like jokingly, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. And it took me until Joy to realize, oh no, yeah, each episode essentially, or each chapter has a different theme to it, and it has a different deeper meaning. And it did take me to the second level to really understand that, because like I said before, it was going from a dark time where I didn't know her, and now my life is more bright and vibrant, and the entire chapter of joy is just that. It's just joyful, and there's so many colors, and you're riding around on snails, and you're getting to know each other, and you're playing around, and it's like you're becoming friends, and it's just such a joyous occasion or whatever.
Right.
And also, spring is when things grow. So what is growing? Their friendship. Their friendship is growing, and so I love that kind of underlying theme in the whole level or whatever.
Yeah.
Then they become friends, but then something happens, and that's when we get to Away. This is a complete contrast to Joy, and it really, like, if you didn't think you were gonna cry by the end of this at the very beginning of the game, this is when you start to think, oh no, they're gonna be dealing with some serious shit, because Away, the entire world around you is breaking apart and things are collapsing. And on the one hand, I definitely think that yes, that did happen, but I also feel like it, once again, we're going back to the metaphor of them splitting apart. Basically, their families have a disagreement about how they should deal with these earthquakes, and they get split up. And so their world is literally and mentally coming apart right in front of them.
Yeah, story wise, I feel like this is for me the first time that I was really struck by the visuals, because the entire time you're on the map, like you're seeing the struggle between, especially in the memories too, between the different villagers is the way I gathered it. And like for whatever reason, it's like a Romeo and Juliet kind of thing. Like they can't be together. Like their families are wanting to split them apart. Um, Gameplay wise, probably one of my favorite levels in the entire game. I the entire time am gripping my controller, and this is one of those that I realized, oh, I haven't played a lot of games like this, or developers don't really utilize a lot of this. When I'm having to actively move my hand around or do something, reconfigure the controller to keep pressing this so I can hold on to this, but also freezing time and moving time like this, it was a little, at first I was like, oh, but I'm like, I love this. But quickly as the level is going on, and like, you're talking about everything's breaking apart, you have to really get creative with it. Like one of my favorite parts is like the boulder that comes crashing through the map. Like, and I don't, you probably did it the same way. It's probably only one way, but like I jumped on there and then just very slowly, while I was speeding up, was and everything with the hooks too, and the fact of like if you don't pause it, like after you bring the worlds together, if you bring the clips together, then it's automatically and just going to go back to where it was.
It's going to keep going.
And every level's like that, but this is the first time where you're seeing visually it happening, because you have two cliffs that you're putting together and they're breaking back apart.
And then it just keeps happening over and over again. I mean, as far as gameplay alone, I'd have to agree. This is probably one of my favorite ones, and it is because the passage of time and the rewinding and fast forwarding is played very well in all the other ones, but this is one of the ones that just use it in the most unique way. You literally have to let a wall crumble and fall so that you can then get over and then uncrumble it and then get over it again, and then you have to crumble, uncrumble. And so creatively, this is one of the coolest ones. And then just it also just means the most, because it's like I said, she and Joy for the most part are pretty joyous in general, because you're going from winter to spring, and then Joy is nothing but spring. So this is the first time where it's like, okay, I get the trials and tribulation of this person's life, and it's not always going to be a joyous occasion or whatever. And that contrast between the beginning of it to, nope, things are getting real. I just really, really like that.
For Alone, first time I feel like you get a real creepy vibe from the game. And you, again, are introduced to a different way to use that time mechanic. the whole thing throughout the level is you're alone. And so you've got these entities that are trying to crowd around you, but right off the bat, you notice that they're shaped and they look like you.
Mm-hmm.
So, like for me, I assumed that it was, I actually thought it was really cool because I really do enjoy whenever developers try to do something different and artistic and creative when it comes to representing things like depression or fear in that sense or something along those lines. And so the fact of you're not only having to avoid these, but also trying to get the time mechanic to go in a way where is this the one where the lightning strikes?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, you have to basically freeze it at the perfect time lightning is striking, so you can walk through without them
getting
trying to attack you.
I mean, this is probably one of the more visually stunning ones because Joy was visually stunning because of how many colors there was. This one is visually stunning because of what it does with lighting. You literally have to, like you said, freeze the lightning, but then when you freeze it, it's still kind of like crackles just a little bit, and oh my god, especially if you can get a crack just going down the screen, and then you have to just wait for that okay, that's right there, freeze it. Visually it's just so stunning. And also, I love the dark figures because it's like if they surround you, then you turn dark and you just kind of fall over. Which, like you said, oh my God, have I had days where I've been surrounded by depression, and if it overtook me, I literally couldn't do anything. I had to sit down, I had to lay down, I had to just be alone. And a developer being able to visually show that in such an interesting way. But also what I like about this is that it isn't just about depression, but also overcoming it, overcoming self-doubt, overcoming fear. He's going out on his own, probably for the first time in a while, because in a way, it kind of is implied that you guys are either teens or you're close to being adults. Whereas you were a kid. So, by the timeline, you've spent your whole life with this best friend and everything's been joyous and yay. And now everything's, falling apart. And now this is the first time since you were small that you're actually alone because you are leaving the comfort of your village and essentially your family. And you're leaving that comfort, that safety, and you're deciding she is more important to me than all of that, and I have to push through that. And being able to show that with no dialogue and just with what's going on in the level and the way that they have these entities is just so great. And so by the end of the chapter, you reunite and you just feel this
feel it,
off of your shoulders, and you're just like, oh my God. I mean, especially the way they light it, where it's this cave off in the distance, and you're just like, I can do this.
I can do it.
Oh my God.
I don't know if it was just me, but the fear characters, they reminded me a lot of the other, I don't remember what they're called in Soul, the trapped souls.
Oh,
they reminded me a lot of that.
Yeah, even though this came out before it, it's definitely something that runs hand in hand.
Holy shit, it did.
Oh, yeah.
2019. God, that movie came out, what, in 2020?
I think so. It was right near the end of it. So, but this was technically a year before. So we get back with this person, and that's when the romance starts, because you basically had your world fall down around you, and it made you realize, I have to be with this person. I have to risk life and limb to get back to this person. And so this was a very nice reprieve, because now we're back to this, vibrant colors. We're literally floating on petals and stuff like that. And so this one was just a nice this one was a nice break for what is certainly, I mean, by this point, I'm like, oh, the rest of this is going to suck, isn't it? I just had this bad feeling oh, this is so nice. What does that mean?
Right. Yeah. Nice palate cleanser.
Yes.
For me, I feel like gameplay wise, this might be one of my least favorite ones.
I can see that.
Just
Yeah.
because when I'm sitting there thinking about like, because we're going through here and I'm thinking about Away and like I'm remembering me moving, and with this one, I literally just remember jumping.
Yeah.
And it's kind of one of those gameplay, but I think they're trying to mostly have you adhere to the visuals of like, look at this romance, look at this flowering
Yeah.
romance.
Yeah. This one was way more about the way it made you feel while you were going through it, not the actual act of going through it. So yeah, definitely.
Right. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, and I calm before the storm is another way you could call it.
Yes.
So we go into fruit right after that, and fruit, I mean, right off the bat is giving you like you clearly see like what it's relating to and what it's pertaining to is the birth and the growth of their child
inside her belly.
Inside her belly. So like gameplay wise, I really enjoyed this one. Visually, it was really cool. Like I'm like, man, this is really pretty. So I'm going through and I collected most of the memories in this level. And every single one of them is about them doing something leading up to the pregnancy. And I'm like, yeah, fuck.
Right? Like, there is no way to go through this level and just be like, it is joyous but at the same time, you just have this sinking feeling, and maybe that's why they framed it the way they did, which is you have the bright flower, which is like almost the hope of having a child, but the rest of the level is like very dark, and so I feel like that was definitely an artistical choice on their end.
The one I remember specifically that not triggered me, but like triggered that initial thought was the one whenever they had the crib upside down, like they were still building it. And I remember specifically going, this is going to hurt like a son of a bitch. I know it is. But yeah, the level ends and everything again comes crumbling down.
This was this was hard because the whole level you are watching this flower blossom up and up, and you're making your way around it. You don't ever touch the flower. It is just in the background. And before I get moved on, I loved that everything basically looked like blood cells. And so it's like we're jumping on blood cells, but it's also, so anyways, so yeah, you're watching this flower just go up and up and up. You get to it, it blossoms. There's this bright little kind of egg-shaped thing, but then it flickers. And just like the moment that happened, I'm like, God damn it. God fucking damn. No. If you are a parent, if you've had a child, if you've been like me who had to send their kid to NICU, oh my God, this hit me so fucking hard. As soon as that flickered, I'm like, no. And then the next thing you see after you basically fall down into a dark ravine is a little bundle on a table, and it's just like
on a funeral pyre.
I broke. I cried, and I put my controller down. I'm just like holding my head. I'm just, oh my God, I am broken. But the part that broke me even more than that, I cried maybe for a good 30 seconds, let's say. Okay? I'm like, okay, it's fine. I can do this. Picked up the controller, started to move, and the character just fell down to his knees. And I'm just like, then it was at least 2 or 3 minutes of just crying, like, oh my God. Like, he was feeling what I was feeling, and the developers doing that to me was just like, screw you, but also good freaking job. Oh my God.
Yeah, so it was a rough morning. Let's put it to you like that. And so like what
is this what you started with?
So no. This isn't what I started with. I started with fruit this morning. I think I finished with romance last night, and then I started with fruit this morning.
Oh man!
And so, like I said in the last one, I was like, man, this is gonna hurt like a son of a bitch. Yeah. I wasn't expecting it to be the very next thing.
Yeah.
And so my end, I didn't actually cry. I did well up really, really like a lot, and I felt the wave of emotion like I'm going to. There's only been one game that I can think of that's ever made me full out cry, and that was the beginning of The Last of Us. To give you perspective.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so for this, the same thing. Notice he was like, I, I think it was after the second time I walked, and he did it again because he does it twice. I paused it and went, all right, I need a break. At this same time, unprovoked completely, I hear my girlfriend in the background going, "Hey." And I went, "What?" And the couch is like right next to, like the couch is on the other side of this wall.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, "Hey," and I look over and she was getting ready for work and she just walked out topless. And I was like, "Thank you. I actually needed that." I was like, "You don't realize how perfect that was." And so I ended up telling her about it later and she goes, "Yep, that'll do it. That'll do it." I'm like, "Yeah,
that'll do it.
yeah,
Yep.
I myself not having, I guess, a child myself, but taking care of like my girlfriend's son.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I have that same emotional attachment that you do, but I definitely like when I saw that, I was like, oh, I'm not okay. Definitely not okay. And they're not okay for doing that like right off the bat, like doing that because I was expecting it later on in a couple levels.
Yeah.
Like I was preparing myself to be emotionally ruined in at least 2 levels, not the next scene.
Yeah.
Not the next scene.
I mean,
but
and then the whole level was also just like everything has always been a metaphor. That's not, if that's not obvious by now, but like it starts off where like you're basically surrounded by these vines and they're creaking and cracking and it's just like, okay, so this is what, this is what losing a loved one feels like. You just feel surrounded and you just feel like nothing feels right. And then the fire comes, and the fire was almost just as hard because it's like, here are all these things that you could have had.
Yeah.
Oh my God, just.
See, the first one I didn't really notice specifically. It's like that's what they were doing because I didn't know they were going to do it again and again.
Right.
So, like after the second one, I was like, "Oh, you son of a bitch! Like, why are you doing this to me?" But the bright side of that, bright side of that is the actual fire mechanic.
Yeah.
Was really cool. Mm-hmm. Like really, really cool to play around with. I think even more so than the lightning, although more cumbersome because you definitely had to avoid getting caught on fire,
Yeah. I mean, there's times where you'd have the fire right behind you, but you had to have it close enough so that the dark figures, because they show back up, the dark figures are right in front of you. So you have to keep moving, like that was kind of tricky or whatever.
Yeah. Whoa. I just had an epiphany.
Go for it.
So another thing that ties into the whole metaphor part of this and everything, like the statues catching on fire and the world being on fire, is probably feeling the pain of what the baby's feeling being burned.
Yep. Yeah. That. Whew! Oh my God. So it's like, the vines were representing like this depression just absolutely suffocating you. The fire is like a metaphor for what could have been being just burnt away to smoke. And then it ends, and the way it ends is like uplifting, but also just like if you have depression, like the way this ends is just like, yeah, that's like my life. My life is on that mountainside climbing my way up, just kept climbing and climbing. And they deliberately made this part go on for way too long because he was making himself.
Yeah, he was bringing himself back
up. Out of depression. And like that feeling of like knowing what that's like to have to pull yourself out of depression is just like, oof.
Yeah, and they had to go and make it worse with the memories too by just basically showing that she, the mother, is so completely distraught. And while he is also broken, he is additionally broken because she is broken. Yeah. And he doesn't know how to put her back together. And like the one that the whole level is just, okay, I'm fine. I'm not. Okay, I'm fine. I'm not. And the one that got me was whenever he it was the memory when she was by the crib, by the empty crib, crying, and he had his hand over her. And then the next memory is her still at the crib and him sitting outside. And it's like,
oh my god, yeah.
But yeah, with the pulling up, I do like how they ended with that memory too of him giving her the flower, and it's like that hope that things are gonna be. Then you go to Solace, which is Super Mario Galaxy, the level. Going back into the metaphor itself, like the big gameplay mechanic introduced is literally pulling the pieces back together of the world so you can traverse to the next part.
Yeah. So you can make your way back to her.
Exactly. And this is kind of one of those where I feel like it's kind of giving you sort of, hey, you've done all this other stuff with the mechanic, like, kind of put everything together. It feels like this is where you do a lot of everything you've done so far. But also, for me, this one I felt kind of went on a little long. Like I was expecting it to be sooner, like a couple times where I jumped on the jet stream to get to her. I was expecting to get to her, not to a different part of the level.
Honestly, I think that was on purpose, because I feel like basically it was trying to show that like every time he felt he made progress with her, she would just go back into depression. So I definitely feel like that part was on purpose. Unfortunately, gameplay wise, that can make it a little hard. But no, I definitely feel like this whole game is just about fucking with your emotions and making you feel what you should feel. So if you felt like it went on for too long, yeah, it probably fucking did. She was probably not okay for a very fucking long time, because as depressed as a man can get, there is no way, shape, or form that we could ever understand what it's like to feel something growing in you, and that thing that's growing in you is just gone. It's gone. You were with that thing morning, noon, night, when you're sleeping, when you're taking a shit, when you're in the shower, when you're at work. That thing is with you. And every time you take a bite of something and they really like it, and to feel that they kind of are reacting to it. If you have something spicy, or if you have something, maybe it gives them hiccups, and you can feel those hiccups inside you. So as depressed as a man can get about losing a loved one, losing a child, there is absolutely no way that we could ever truly understand what it feels like to just have something that you were growing, and it doesn't turn out well. Like, and so I guess what I was getting at is that, like, that's why it goes on for a while, is because, like, the man has to be the stronger one, because there's no words for what she must be feeling. So sorry, go on.
I was gonna ask, did Ashley play this game, or did she watch you play it?
No, I really want to.
Maybe if she doesn't want to play it, you just be like, hey, it's 2.5 hours, just sit down,
watch me.
I want you to watch this. One gameplay thing that I did realize that I think is really cool, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in Solace, except for the occasional piece of debris that goes by, I'm pretty sure mechanically they have her in your center of view each time. So if you're moving off in this direction, it's readjusting it to where you can
absolutely
still seeing her at all times, which I think is it's it's one of the things. It's like magicians at work, where it's like so perfect and everything works so flawlessly that you cannot see the faults.
And I feel like that's also what makes the end of the level hit so hard, because this entire time she's just basically fetal position on the ground, and just nothing can make her feel better, And I mean, maybe part of the metaphor of going through all the memories of your time with her is basically you trying to say, hey, remember that one time? And it does nothing. Hey, you remember when we fell in love? And it does nothing. And she just, nothing would make her feel better. And so then when you do get on that final slipstream and she's not okay, she's still not okay, but there's hope at the very end, and you embrace each other again. Because I'm sure that, I mean, especially the memories, that you pick up along the way. It's very much just you guys are separate. You can no longer find each other. So by you
Mm.
piecing things together, you're finally able to embrace each other again. And seeing her change, because like you said, it's in the center of your view the whole time you're struggling through this episode or whatever. It finally changes to you guys hugging each other. It was just like, oh yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
great.
that's it.
And then the game decides to fuck with you again because it's just like, come on. This is both happy, but also like, fuck you, game, because it's like,
Hmm.
oh, the name of the penultimate chapter is called Old. So basically, you guys have gotten past this life altering depression, and you had to find some way of just basically moving on. And you did, and now you get this chance to grow old with the woman you love. And so at the very beginning of the episode, I definitely feel like this was a good thing. Like, oh, isn't that nice? They're growing old together. But then it's like, oh no. Very soon, this turns into, okay, this seems like a really, really bad winter and something bad is going to happen.
Yeah, and the beginning of the level, you're really gameplay wise playing against the cold.
Mm-hmm.
You're having to really find sources of heat, for warmth, and you're right. It starts out, and you guys are older together. Some time has passed, and you're picking up the pieces of what happened,
Mm-hmm.
and then middle of the way through, you see that stone statue of her falling on the snow. And then that's when oh, here it comes. Here it comes.
Ba-na-na-na, ba-na-na-na, da-da-na,
Da-da-da,
da-da-na-na-na.
da-da-da-da-da. Yeah,
That's, I mean, this entire game is essentially why it's called
it's Up.
Pixar.
Yeah,
It's Up. It's
yeah.
a very elongated version of Up. And this
This
definitely
is
solidified that.
this would be a movie if Pixar and A24 like worked together. That's exactly what this would be.
Ooh, I like that. That's a very astute observation. Yeah. So by the end of it, and I think the thing, whew, I think the thing that hurt the most was the ending memory that you pick up,
Mhm.
and it's the butterfly flying out the window, and it's like, motherfucker, that's what we've been picking up this whole time. We've been picking up pieces of her. This game is not about us. It's about fucking her or whatever. And I was just like, that realization was just like, whoa.
Yeah, it's just leading up to the again. I'm not okay.
Yeah.
But we then go on to a level we don't know the title to until the very, very end, which leads it to be kind of confusing, but it's hope. And so pretty much you're picking up where that last memory left off
Mm-hmm.
of following that light throughout the level. And this one, gameplay wise, is kind of cool just because you're having to balance in between seeing where to go
Mm-hmm.
and watching terrain. So like there were several times where I fell not knowing I was on ice
Right.
and having to go back. But as the level goes on, it's pretty much dark the whole thing, which
Mm-hmm.
kind of gave me a lot of Deep Rock vibes. So I felt comfortable in the dark. You think darkness is your ally? But I really enjoyed how you basically were having to survive off of that light. Like
Mm-hmm.
that was the main focus of that shifting mechanic, whereas the rest of the game you were paying attention to literally everything else in the world that was being affected by it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot more, it's a great final chapter because it's just you and her going through this level.
Yeah, I mean, the very beginning is essentially like her soul leaving her body. And I feel like maybe part of the metaphor is like you not wanting to let go because you're chasing after her soul the entire time. And
Yeah.
sometimes it gets closer, sometimes it goes away. I
Hmm.
This played with the time manipulation way more than a lot of the levels, because there were
Hmm.
sometimes you'd have to let it go, and it would finally loop back around back to you, but then you'd
Hmm.
have to actually reverse it the whole time to actually find the path that you needed to go on and everything. So this
Right.
one, yeah, this one was Yeah. Oh, this one.
Y-
Oh,
y- And they knew exactly what they were doing too, because leading up to the very end of the level, very end of the game, I mean, they're basically as her soul is going through the different parts of ice, you're recapping the other significant moments of not only the game, but the two of both of your lives together.
yeah.
And from the very beginning to children to and do you want to cover the last part, or do you want me to?
Oof. Well, let me. I will preface the last part with this. I said before how I was in a different place when I first played this back in 2019 to where I am now. Part of it is post pandemic, part of it is going through the difficulties of pandemic and everything. But also as part of it is just where I was mentally. Where I was mentally back in 2019 and 2018 was very much I kind of wanted to die. So it was very hard and I had to pull myself out of depression so many times. So it hit me in different spots, I think. Because in parts where it was about depression, it was hitting home because that's where I was in my life. Now 2022, I replayed it and now I'm at a part of my life where I am constantly struggling with existentialism and the fear of getting old and dying. I will lay in bed and I will just sometimes weep because I don't want to get old and I don't want to die. So, this very last episode, or this very last chapter of seeing the soul leave her body, it wasn't just like I was crying at the end where it was like showing our memories together and oh it's like it's nice but it's also sad or whatever. I was crying this entire chapter, literally from start to end, and it built when it was going through the light and it was showing the silhouettes or whatever. I lost it anymore. I was literally fighting through tears making myself finish this game because it hit me so much different. I'm at a place now where I don't want to die. I don't want to like I have these existential crises on so many occasions, too many to be
Mhm.
comfortable with. And then for this game to basically just slap me in the face and be like, "Yep, you're going through it again." Whew, it was hard. It was literally hard for me to get through this level. And then woo wait. And then we get to the mountain. Beginning of the game shows this mountain in the background and it this is how it first introduces the time manipulation is it makes you make the light touch the top of the mountain. So this mountain, just like in Solace, this mountain has been like in your background for the entire game. So you let's see if I can do this without crying because when I told my wife about it I cried. So you get to the top of the mountain and it's very kind of like the music and everything. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about music and just the overall, but like the music was very much. So you get to the top of the mountain, and who's there but your wife? And like that, like I was, like I said, I was already crying. I was
Mhm.
already I was a
Mhm.
broken man, and I just didn't know how much more I could be broken because the camera slowly pans around and the baby is in her hands. And if you thought I lost it before, oh my god, I was already broken and it just kept breaking into so many more pieces because seeing that was sad. It was so sad because of what happened in my life, but it was also like this moment of joy, of just like pure joy. Like I finally get to reunite with my wife for one, but then reunite with that of what could have been.
Yeah, yeah, that's yeah, kind of the same. I pretty much I didn't cry at this part either, but the same amount of emotion from Ashes. I was like go up, I was like, okay, that makes sense. And then the camera pans around like you said, and I see it, and I'm like, And then part of me was expecting her to come back to life for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And then when he just animators, everyone who is responsible for this game, I mean, I can't give them any more props because while there's no dialogue the entire game, you quite literally can feel and hear exactly what he is saying as he puts his hand on her shoulder and then he turns to stone with them and they're all together again. And it's like,
oh man, this entire game, what it does so well is it there's plenty of people who say show don't tell, and that is exactly what this game did. It showed you every emotion that you could possibly have. It showed you fear, it showed you joy, it showed you loss, it showed you acceptance, it showed you hope, and then it took that hope away from you, but then it gave it right back because you die and you get back to your loved ones, and like, wow. And it did everything without having to say a word, and it did it all through the gameplay itself. This is a game that
there's also no facial features, mind you.
Yeah, he has no eyes and no mouth. So everything is literally just body language and how he's presenting himself. But this game is one of the very few games where the gameplay isn't just there to get you from point A to point B. Like maybe a stupid example, but Uncharted. The story in Uncharted is leaps and bounds better than the gameplay, because the gameplay pretty much is just yay, action hero,
puzzles.
Yeah, it's kind of there, and in some cases you prefer the story over having to do this, blockbuster.
Right. It's a little bit more tedious.
Yeah. But in this one, the gameplay, we'll go back to Solace. You were talking about how it went on a little bit too long. Sometimes when I think I'd get close to her, it would turn out that I'm just going to the next area. And I'm like, that's on purpose. Everything has... Really think about this, okay? Really think about this. Every single angle, every single moment of this game had to be scrutinized. Because... I mean, for one, you can't control the camera, so they had full control over what to show you, and then they had to think about everything. Even that very first level where it is, snow and then spring, they had to think about every angle of what was going on, because the water would go up, the water would go down, the water would go up. Sometimes you needed it down, sometimes you needed it up, and they had to think about every inch of that playing field and where you were going to be looking at it from and everything. But that goes for the entire game. This is one of the very few games where like the gameplay matters to the story itself, and that's rare. It's extremely rare for the game. Most gameplay is just that, gameplay, right? The story is just what happens in between the gameplay. But this marries story and gameplay to such a degree that it is beautiful, and it makes you go through what the characters are going through, because it physically makes you pull your life back together, like in Solace, or it makes you come to terms with the loss in Ashes, or it makes you just feel so much joy and makes you feel the romance and everything. Oh my god, this fucking game.
Definitely a beautiful telling. Honestly, it's a perfect game for Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Because it is, well...
I mean, not any better than Daddy Simulator. where you literally
Dream Daddy Simulator.
Yeah, you literally have to find romance for your daddy. But no, I mean, this is a love story through and through.
From start to finish. Yeah. That's all it's about.
So, hopefully you have played it and we didn't just spoil it all for you, but honestly, even if we spoiled it for you, you could probably still...
It's still worth a play.
Yeah, it's still worth a play. So,
to experience those specifically, it's something you do have to experience.
Definitely.
Just make sure you have a lot of tissues.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so I mean, thank you, Piccolo. Thank you so much for making this game, and it is certainly a masterpiece, and it is certainly a unspoken masterpiece because there's just a lot of people who don't even know it exists. So thank you so much for joining us today, and next week we'll have something maybe a little bit more happy before we go back into the deep darkness. But anyways, I was Nick.
And I was Nate.
And you guys have a good one.